Hello learners, this is Habiba with Excel with me. If you like the video, please do like, share, subscribe and comment below. Let's start today's class, that is Central Teacher Eligibility Test, Paper 2, Social Science Class 6, our Pass 1 NCERT syllabus. Already we have done with the chapters 1st to 4th. Today we are going to discuss the questions related to 5th chapter, Kings and an Early Republic. Let's start with the questions. From when do we find some changes taking place in the ways in which Rajas were chosen? Around 3000 years ago. Some men now became recognized as Rajas by performing very big sacrifices. Now, what was one of the rituals through which men were recognized as Rajas? That was the Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice. That means these Rajas used to send the horse, they leave the horse up to what extent the horse can go and nobody can object. That much area they used to occupy and they used to perform the Ashwamedha Yagyas. They are the sacrifices. Now, statements true or false, let's understand. The Raja who organized the sacrifice was recognized as being very powerful. All those who came brought gifts for him. Both are correct, they are true. Now, the statements, the Raja was a central figure in these rituals. He often had a special seat, a throne or tiger skin. His charioteer, who was his companion in the battlefield and witnessed his exploits, chanted tales of his glory. All the statements are correct. Now, who were included in the rituals such as sacrifice? Now, everybody at that time also not allowed to attend these rituals. Let's understand who all have attended, might have attended these sacrifices. Relatives, especially Rajas' wives and sons. Now, other Rajas were simply spectators who had to sit and watch the performance of the sacrifice, and then priests performed the rituals including the sprinkling of sacred water on the king. Then the ordinary people, the Vish or the Vaishya, also brought gifts. Now, who were excluded from many rituals? We have understood those people were included. Who were included here? Let's see once again. The relatives, especially Raja's wife and sons, and then other Rajas, and then priests, and then ordinary people like Vish or Vaishya. So, these were the people who were included in the sacrifices. Now, who were not included? They were excluded. People who were regarded as Shudras. The people who were regarded as Shudras. They were excluded from these sacrifices by the priests. Now, what were the books that were composed in North India, especially in the areas drained by the Ganga and the Yamuna during this period called? These books are often called later Vedic. We have understood about the Vedic period. Now, this is later Vedic period. In the previous class, we have understood about the Vedic period. Now, this is later Vedic period. Now, what are the several different groups in society at this time? There were priests and warriors, farmers, herders, traders, craftspersons, laborers, fishing folk and forest people. Now, next question, which group of people regarded as rich? That time also rich and poor difference was there. Some people were regarded as rich and some as poor. Let's understand who were rich. Some priests and warriors were rich, as were some farmers and traders. Farmers and traders who had money, they were regarded as rich people. Now, which group of people regarded as poor? Including many herders, craftspersons, laborers, fishing folk and hunters and gatherers were poor. Now, who divided people into 4 groups called Varnas? This point is very important. We have to remember this Varnas. Now, these priests divided these people as groups, that is 4 groups called Varnas. Now, According to the priests, each Varna had a different set of functions. Now let's understand, questions may come from these. So let's understand the 4 Varnas. First one is the Brahmins. They were expected to study and teach the Vedas, perform sacrifices and receive gifts. These points are very important. That means they are expected to study and teach the Vedas and perform sacrifices and receive gifts. Now the next one is the rulers, also known as Kshatriyas. Very important point we have to remember. Kshatriyas expected to fight battles and protect people. And the third one is the Vish or the Vaishyas. They were expected to be the farmers, herders and traders who had money. So these are the 3 groups. And the 4th important group is the Shudras here. They had to serve the other 3 groups and could not perform any rituals. Often women were also grouped with the Shudras. Both women and Shudras were not allowed to study the Vedas. So these are the 4 groups. Let's understand what are the 4 groups. The Brahmins, the rulers, the Vish or the Vaishyas and the Shudras. Now who could perform the sacrifices? Both the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas can perform the sacrifices. Now at that time untouchables were there who according to the priests. So let's understand the statements related to untouchables according to the priest. These included some craftspersons, hunters and gatherers, as well as people who help perform burials and cremations. The priests said that contact with these groups was polluting. That's why they called them as untouchables. Now painted graveware, very important statements also can come from this painted graveware. Plates and bowls are the most common vessels made out of painted graveware. These are extremely fine to touch with a nice smooth surface. Perhaps these were used on special occasions for important people and to serve special food. Now what we have to remember in this question is the what kind of things they used, that is painted graveware. The Rajas who performed these big sacrifices were now recognized as being Rajas of Janapadas rather than Janas. Janas are the people who resided in those areas, those Janas, those places were called as Janapadas. Now what was the word Janapada literally mean? The land where the Jana set its foot and settled down. That is Janapada. Pada means the foot. Jana means people. So we can literally understand the meaning here. Now archaeologists have excavated a number of settlements in these Janapadas. So let's understand what are they. So Purana Kila in Delhi, Hastinapura near Meerut and Atrajikhera in near Etah. The last 2 are in Uttar Pradesh. So very important question. Now statements. Archaeologists found that people lived in huts and kept cattle as well as other animals. They also grew a variety of crops that we have to remember, that is rice, wheat, barley, pulses, sugarcane, sesame and mustard. These were the food grains, variety of crops. Now the earthen pots, very important question here, made by the people, Janapadas. These were found by the archaeologists also while they were excavating things. Now some of these were grey in color, others were red. This is important point we have to remember. Some pots were in grey color and some were in red color. One special type of pottery found at these sites is known as painted graveware. So these grey pots had painted designs, usually simple lines and geometric patterns. This is the important point we have to remember. What pattern they had, that is geometric patterns. Now about 2500 years ago, some Janapadas became more important than others, and what were they known as? They were known as Mahajanapadas. Very important question, this is Mahajanapadas. Now let's see here, very important Janapadas we can see here. Here you can see the Vajji, Magadha, Anga, Avanti, then Panchala. Very important Kaushambi here. So these are all very important places we have to remember. Now the fortification wall at Kausambi, you can see the picture here. This is a picture of remains of a wall made of brick found near present day Allahabad. This is very important point where we found this fortified wall, that is present day Allahabad, that is Uttar Pradesh. A part of it was probably built about 2500 years ago. Now let's understand the statements. The new Rajas began maintaining armies. Soldiers were paid regular salaries and maintained by the king throughout the year. Some payments were probably made using punch marked coins. This is important point you have to remember, that is punch marked coins. Why do the rulers of the Mahajanapadas needed more resources? Why? Because building huge forts, and also maintaining big armies, soldiers need to be paid also. That's why they had to, these rulers of the Mahajanapadas needed more resources. Both are correct. Now, who started collecting regular taxes instead of depending on occasional gifts brought by people, as in the case of the Raja of the Janapadas? So now taxation has been introduced during the time of Mahajanapadas. The rulers of the Mahajanapadas started the system of collecting the taxes instead of depending on the gifts to maintain their armies and to give the salaries to the soldiers. Now taxes on crops were the most important here. This was because most people were farmers. Usually that the tax was fixed at 1/6 of what was produced. This can come as a statement how much they had to pay the tax, these farmers, that was 1/6 what was produced. This was known as the bhaga or a share. So very, very important. All the points are correct here. All the statements are correct. How are the taxes on craftspersons collected? These could have been in the form of labor. For example, a weaver or a smith may have had to work for a day every month for the king. So this is how they started collecting the taxes. How were the herders expected to pay taxes here? In the form of animals and animal produce. Then regular taxes during Mahajanapadas statements are: there were taxes on goods that were bought and sold through trade. Hunters and gatherers had to provide forest produce to the Raja. Both are correct. Now, what were the two major changes in agriculture around this time? That was Mahajanata period. That was the growing use of iron plowshares. People began transplanting paddy also. Transplanting, as we all know, first they throw all the seeds in the field. They come in bulk, then they grow in bulk, and then they remove that and spread in different areas. Who did the transplanting paddy work here? They were slave men and women, dasa and dasis, and then landless agricultural laborers. They are kammakaras. This is also very important point. Kammakaras, dasas and dasis, and also kammakaras. Who are kammakaras? Question can come. Also had come also. Those were the landless agricultural laborers were called as kammakaras. What became the most important Mahajanapada in about 200 years? That was Magadha, very important kingdom. Which rivers flowed through Magadha? The Ganga and Son. This was important for transport, water supplies, making the land fertile. Now, who were the two very powerful rulers of Magadha who used all possible means to conquer other Janapadas? They were Bimbisara and Ajatasattu. Then who was the important ruler of Magadha who extended his control up to the northwest part of the subcontinent? He was Mahapadmananda. Now, what was the capital of Magadha for several years? That was Rajagriha, present day Rajgir in Bihar. Later, the capital was shifted to Pataliputra, present day Patna. More than 2300 years ago, who was the ruler lived in Macedonia in Europe, wanted to become a world conqueror? All of us know that it was Alexander. He couldn't conquer whole the world, but he conquered only parts of Egypt and West Asia and came to Indian subcontinent, reaching up to the banks of the Bias only. Now let's understand the statements related to Alexander here. When Alexander wanted to march further eastwards, his soldiers refused. They were scared as they had heard that the rulers of India had vast armies of foot, soldiers, chariots and elephants. This is most important question. These statements have come already in the previous year question papers. So both the statements are correct. Alexander could not enter because they were scared. The soldiers were scared of Indian rulers. Now Vajji, with its capital at Vaishali, Bihar now, was under a different form of government known as Gana or Sangha. Very, very important question. This is Vajji's capital. Vaishali, what kind of form government they had, Gana or Sangha. Now let's understand the statements. In a Gana or a Sangha, there were not one but many rulers. Sometimes even when thousands of men ruled together, each one was known as a Raja. So both the statements are correct. In a Gana or a Sangha, Rajas performed rituals together, also met in assemblies and decided what had to be done and how through discussions and debate. Now, who could not participate in these assemblies in a Gana or a Sangha? Women, dasas and kamakaras. Kamakaras, already I told you, the landless agricultural laborers, and dasas, dasis, as we all know. Women, dasas and kamakaras, these people are not allowed in the assemblies in a Gana or a Sangha. Now statements, both the Buddha and Mahavira belong to Ganas or Sanghas. Some of the most vivid descriptions of life in the Sanghas can be found in Buddhist books. Yes, both are correct. Now Gana, a group that has many members. Sangha, organization of association. Rajas, Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice. Janapada, the land where the Jana set its foot and settled down. Mahajanapadas, regular taxes they have introduced. All these are correct. It can come as maybe find out the correct matching, or also match the following also it can come. Pairing also it can come. So Gana, a group that has many members. Sangha, organization or association. Rajas, Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice they performed. Janapada, the land where the Jana set its foot and settled down. Mahajanapadas, for the first time they have started the regular taxation. Name a famous Buddhist book which contains name a famous Buddhist book which contains some of the speeches of the Buddha which were written down about 2300 years ago. This is an account of the Vajjis from the Digha Nikaya. Who wanted to attack the Vajjis and sent his minister named Vasakara. Very important point again. This was the minister Vasakara to the Buddha to get his advice on the matter. That was Ajada Sattu. Now statements, Rajas of powerful kingdoms tried to conquer the Sanghas. These lasted for a very long time till about 1500 years ago, when the last of the Ganas or Sanghas were conquered by the Gupta rulers. So both are correct. Rajas of powerful kingdoms, what they did, they tried to conquer the Sanghas, the organization. These lasted for a very long time, that was about 1500 years till the Gupta rulers have come. Now at the end of the chapter we have elsewhere, from this also question can come. So let's understand, when was the people of the Athens set up a form of government which was called a democracy, which lasted for about 200 years ago. That was around 2500 years ago. Who were recognized as full citizens here in the Athens? All free men over the age of 30. Now statements, there was an assembly that met at least 40 times a year to decide on important matters. All citizens could attend these meetings. Appointments for many positions were made through lottery. Citizens were expected to serve in the army and the navy. Women were not considered citizens. So many foreigners who lived and worked in Athens as merchants and craftspersons did not have rights as citizens. There were several thousand slaves in Athens who worked in mines, fields, households and workshops. They too were not treated as citizens. So these are all the important points. Let's revise quickly what are the important points. How many times they met in the assemblies? 40 times. And the citizens, all citizens are allowed to attend the meetings. So appointments for many positions were made through lottery here. Now citizens were expected to serve in the army and the navy, and women were not allowed and considered as citizens here. And then many foreigners who lived, they were also not given, did not have rights here. So there were several thousand slaves in Athens who worked in the mines. They also did not have the right to treated as citizens, and they cannot give the vote here under the lottery system. So we come to the end of this chapter. I will continue the next chapter in the next part. If you like the video, please do share and subscribe and comment below. Thanks for your attention and time. Happy learning.